Orphans and retrogrades, yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. We have a couple of updates from the October Synod on synodality. These come at the hands of our friend Diane Montagna. Two updates 2 days in a row. 3 days ago, she gave us the following tweet that in a recent interview, Jepsen Helena, a German synodal laywoman who's on the board, said the following thing in an interview: "I am for the ordination of women. Also, the LMNOPQRST plus issue must be taken very seriously. It is our last chance." That was 3 days ago. And then the next day after, the day and a half after that, in an interview, the same lady, Jepsen Helena, Germanic laywoman extraordinaire, said that Pope Francis had subsequently chosen her as a voting lay member, lamented that Q people and women's ordination are not or only weakly included in the document. So that's today's show. That for the moment, this lady, Helena Jepsen Spuler, she's a dash lady. She's a dash person. Jepsen Spuler said that she's disappointed. Now, before we get into everything today, I would give you, parish orphans and retrogrades, the simple reminder that Cardinal Casper, previous to the 2015 Synod on the Family, did a similar shuck and jive, saying to Raymond Arroyo in the summer, I think it might have been August of 2015, going into the October 2015 Synod, that he had been disappointed, that the progressive expectations were let down. He was out of favor with Pope Francis. 2 or 3 months later, the Synod begins, and he gets everything he wants, and communion is given to the divorced and civilly remarried adulterers in the church. So, that's some important historical precedent for thinking that maybe Jepsen Spuler is not entirely let down, that it seems that it's some game. That's what we're talking about today, whether or not this is a game, and we'll get into it in a second. For the moment, if you folks out there want to support this YouTube channel, Rules for Retrogrades, then perfect, because we need your support. I'm just a dad with a webcam. This has become a leitmotif.
Right now.
A bad one right now, because the other one's being fixed. Our good one's being fixed. So this is like circa 2020 webcam. And I do this. I'm doing this from a studio at my place, and we have 4 pillars here on Rules for Retrogrades. You know what they are: patriarchy, subsidiarity, education, and of course, right-wing community organizing. And we bring you a unique product that no other conservative or other Catholic on the internet brings you. It's tough because we, and I say we, I mean me and Steph, because she's helping with so much of the patriarchy stuff now. We live on the fringes between Overton Window and on the other side of Overton Window. Not many other people are right there on the borderline. People tend to be way over it, like some of my America First friends. I'm not condemning that, by the way. I'm just saying they're way over it or way under it. We occupy this unique space where we're not just talking about the Latin Mass, which is, yeah, Francis doesn't like it, but it's still totally fine to talk about. I've been kicked off Patreon. I've been kicked out of jobs. I now am watching out for a strike on YouTube, because we're right near the borderline talking about feminism as the original dysphoria. Lots of things like that. So I need your help. Now, if you want to donate to me as a family guy personally, a lot of people do that. You can make a rolling donation, even $3 a month, if you go to timothyjgordon.com and click donate. Or if you want to formally support this show and you get perks, then go to Locals and Subscribe Star, also linked to this episode. Please do it. We need your help. We need your help. Rules for Retrogrades need your help. We talked in the last show about the case for patriarchy, and Ask Your Husband started a counter-revolution that got picked up by bigger channels. Those bigger channels don't have the day-to-day fight for fundulation that medium-sized channels do. And we also don't like to bring this to you every time. I'm more interested in pitching getting out of your blue state and getting to a red state. Help yourself, right? That only helps me indirectly. Help yourself. Go to realestateforlife.org. Get from your blue state to a red state. I pitch that almost every show. I don't pitch Locals, Subscribe Star, donate to us on DonorBox, except once every third show. Because I find it annoying when I'm watching a show, but it's necessary. Also, buy the books associated with this channel. There are, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 self-titled Rules for Retrograde, Catholic Republic, Don't Go to College, The Case for Patriarchy, and of course, Ask Your Husband by the lovely Steph sitting to my left here.
Howdy.
Boy, this camera's bad. Boy,
this
it's bad.
This camera is the worst.
This sounds like some joke, but it's not. This sounds like so. I love self-deprecating humor. I get this color in winter, but because I'm half. I'm not half. I'm big parts Italian and Scottish. So I can get really tan like an Italiano. I can get super, super white like a Scotsman. And it tends to be a, July versus January proposition. Scotsman in January.
You are fish belly white right now.
Well, I mean, it appears that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've been out in the pool almost every day. The lighting is crazy. If you don't believe me, I mean, this is what I'll look like in January. This is not what I look like today. It's just a crappy webcam that we have. Luckily, as a backup.
It's the old TNT cam.
Yeah, I should auction this cam off. This was the TNT webcam. No, I think I used my iPad for that.
I updated to this one at one point.
I should auction it off. It's an article of recent Catholic cultural history, TNT. Whatever. So it looks like a December show in July. Sounds like a Mark Twain novel title. And also, a final word before we get into Helena Jepsen Spiola. I'm debating, Guten Tag, thank you. God bless you. Gesundheit. I will be debating on Trent Horn's channel, the illustrious other Paul, on the epistemology of Sola Scriptura 1 week from today. I'm not sure if it'll be live streamed. I have reason to think it won't. So, but it'll air shortly after that. And it should be a fun time. It'll be on Trent Horn's channel 1 week from today that we actually do the debate. And we cross swords. No, yeah. I'm trying to make less under the breath jokes. Even though most of the people that come here for that. By the way, I just want to say one final thing. Thank you guys so heartfully, so sincerely, so profoundly. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Your guys' comments on the last show I did on the neurosis of the modern stay-at-home wife. Well, we're so supportive and beautiful, and it was just nice. It's nice to be able to go on YouTube, say things in a true way. YouTube's a much better site than Twitter. I just really appreciate it. I don't always read all the comments. Steph always does, but I read, I think, all of them last night. It's just cool to be able to have a heart-to-heart talk where people aren't trying to mischaracterize what you say the way that is a big part of Twitter. Old enemies on Twitter, they never forget, and they're always looking for an aperture, particularly the trad feminists. That's a big contingent of trads. Bitter trad feminists are just looking for a way to attack. It's a lot of the online trads are trad feminists. Very few of, when you go to the TLM, very few of these families are feminists, but a lot of double income trads online. And they're looking for a typo, a little error. Of course, my tweets almost never have typos, but looking for anything you can take in a second context. And the video that we did 2 days ago was it was a lot of fun to do. It felt cathartic to me. I tend to, if I catch a ratio on Twitter, I tend to like to go right to YouTube. And it makes for a very laser sharp and cathartic show, and I usually kind of am restricting my rhetoric, which sometimes admittedly can get a little silly. It can get a little funny, but because of the recent experience. By the way, for those of you out there who don't know, catching a ratio is when there's drastically outsized negative commentary on a tweet versus positive. It's not a common thing. Normally you tweet and it's this weird little system we have where folks like what you said.
People are there to ratio.
People are there to ratio, but it's out of the norm. I get like one every year, a year and a half. The last one I had was on the fact that the Virgin Mary was not sent out in the Great Commission. People are saying, well, she still evangelized. No.
Privately.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not evangelizing to appear in an apparition. And so I explained it on the show, and people were like, that was a great show. A year and a half later, whatever it was, 15 months later, was the next time I caught a Twitter ratio. Some people catch them all the time. And that was on Diapergate 2023. Dun, 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 dun. It's so dumb. We'll probably also address it tomorrow on CMask, because there was a crisis article by Eric Sammons that just vastly misrepresented the situation. I'm telling you, the trad feminism thing. I've been telling you for 4 years.
Trads are afraid of women too.
Trads are afraid of women too. I mean, online trads. It's less so if you go to a TLM. Fewer families, but it is such a strong leviathan that was implanted, that ran across all the constitutions, the hideous bitch goddess of feminism, that it's really strongly implanted in the online trad world, much more so than the online like Calvinist world. We have guys like Doug Wilson, the Orthodox world, where you have not just bros. People say, oh, ortho bros like Jay Dyer, but there's also Rachel Wilson. These people are just so easy to talk with and interact with, and we disagree technically, theologically, a lot with the Calvinists and a little with the Orthodox. But we, all of these parties I just mentioned, realize the main cultural opponent, 95% of culture wars, is feminism. So I end up agreeing a lot more with them than these feminist trads online. It's really odd. Very odd. All right, so let's get to, what's her name? Diane Jepsen Spula. Or Helena Jepsen Spula. That is like arguably the most Teutonic name I've ever heard. She said, I am for the ordination of women. This is a tweet from Diane Montagna 3 days ago. And she also said the LMNOPQRS plus issue must be taken very seriously. She also said, it is our last chance. Okay, I'll read that one to you. But also, just yesterday, which is about a day and a half later, Diane updated that tweet with the following. In an interview after Synod VA presented the October 2023 working document, Jepsen Helena, which is Helena Jepsen Spuler, whom Pope Francis subsequently chose as the new voting lay member, lamented that, quote, Q people, and not like QAnon, Q people, I'm not going to say the word, and women's ordination are not or are only weakly included in the document. So let's take these in turn. What does it mean that as of 3 days ago, she's saying, I'm for the ordination of women, I'm on the the board here. She's a lay member chosen for the board for the October 2023 Synod. And she's talking about LMNOPQRST plus and saying it's our last chance. Let's have a look-see. The synodal process must succeed. Helena Jepsen Spuler openly names the opportunities and challenges for the synodal process. She was a member of the Swiss delegation to the European Assembly held in Prague from February 5th to 9th, 2023, and more women involved in more church things and out of the home things. That's just what we need, isn't it? That's made the workplace so good. It's made voting, the ballot box, so much more effective. It's conduced to such greater government, has it not? Women in pro sports, that's gone really, really well. Pro sports have been elevated because of women's presence there. Women out and about in society, it's always been good. No catastrophic consequences that have broken the back of Western civilization there. So let's get Helena Jepsen Spuler into the synodal process, which Pope Francis did. He's happy to oblige. And here's what she's saying. With some distance to the assembly in Prague, what is your takeaway? She said, mixed. On the one hand, something has started to move in the Catholic Church in Europe, and dialogue has become possible despite widely divergent positions. On the other hand, the also sobering question remains, and now? Spula? With what expectations did you go to Prague, she's asked. With a very pragmatic attitude. Nevertheless, it was intense to experience these tensions. But there were also great encounters with people who are theologically extraordinarily well-grounded. Okay. Where did the resistance come from? This should be good. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this is funny. There were conservative representatives who honestly should have admitted, we don't want the synodal process at all. I don't want the synodal process at all, Mrs. Spuler. But they didn't dare to do that because they knew that they would have taken themselves out of the game with the Pope. So they went along with it, but tried to preserve as much as possible what was already there. Well, I mean, that's called, you have to call audibles sometimes, right? I mean, what are they supposed to do? You're holding them accountable for, like, personally accountable, Spuler, for saying, yeah, I don't want to invalidate my voice or my vote just because I want to hold to doctrine. The synodal process was oriented by Vatican II to getting around doctrine, right? And I just want to do what I can to preserve doctrine one way or the other. There are many ways to skin a cat, so I'll go along with it because the Pope is insisting on it. But, I'm going to have to do it this alternate route. She also said, and I quote, after saying that where'd the resistance come from, asked whether the line between traditionalism and reformism can be located geographically. She said the line ran mainly along the border, this isn't going to shock you, between Eastern and Western Europe. The majority of Eastern European local churches sent very conservative delegations, think Poland or Hungary, almost exclusively made up of clerics. For example, they represented extremely backward-looking positions from the century before last regarding the image of the family and sexual morality. So now perennial teaching is characterized as backward-looking for its perenniality. Think of the trick that she pulls here. Think of the trick pulled by progressives here. If you say, look, my Savior is Jesus Christ, not Elon Musk, by the same token, these folks could say, using the same perverted logic, well, that's backward-looking. You need someone from 2023. That's literally what they could say. What they should say if they're seeking to be consistent. She talks about Western Europe's pretty much all lost. She didn't say that. Where does the difference between East and West come from? She says the historical background plays an important role. For decades, these churches were able only to maintain themselves behind the Iron Curtain through strong demarcation. I suppose this That's where this attachment to traditional images and the need to distinguish so uncompromisingly between the true and false comes from. Well, yeah, it's funny she's admitting here that they distinguish uncompromisingly between true and false. I don't think that's what she meant to say. That's like a Freudian slip, if you believe in such a thing. I'm sure, though she has a variant conception of what might constitute truth or falsity than those conservatives, I'm sure she would argue equally for uncompromising demarcation between truth and falsehood and forming the former and disavowing the latter. But she's kind of admitting her psychology here, which is hilarious. What disturbed you most? She said how rarely theological arguments were made. That was dramatic in parts. That has to change before the Synod in Rome. It's great to gather different opinions, but at some point you have to insist the positions are justified theologically. That's a really strange remark to make. That's a really strange remark to make, I think. Why? Because there is no theology. There is no Catholic theology that would justify the things, the policy agenda that Spuler represents. So why does she want to take it to theological debate? Well, she'll be premising her claims, and it will be done at the Synod in October, on false theologies that Francis will give favor to. I don't care how the talks went. And then we let our differences stand. I, Helena, am for the ordination of women. The Opus Dei representative is totally against it. By acknowledging the difference, the tension was released on the third day. For me, the greatest success of the meeting was that the bishops did not present their own paper. So that's fun, right? That's just a good time. Other questions she was asked at this interview. Why is that a success? She just says why it's a success that they eventually talked about it. What do you expect from this final document? What are you most likely to see movement? How are these issues received at the assembly? What will become of it at the Synod of Bishops in the autumn? Let's read that one. I believe and sincerely hope that something will be possible on the women's issue. There are now many bishops who are prepared to take clear steps. So this regards the October Synod. The priesthood of women will not be introduced right away, but the diaconate of women should come up for serious discussion at the meeting in Rome. Do you hear that? Let me reread that. The priesthood of women will not be discussed in October right away, but the diaconate of women should come up for serious discussion at the meeting in Rome. And so, the voice and vote of women at this assembly. For the moment, we will be satisfied with such partial results and at the same time persistently continue to work. What we would like from a Swiss perspective is unfortunately not possible to the full extent at the moment. So she's admitting the Swiss perspective is heretical, since this is irreformable doctrine that women can't be ordained. Bishop, priest, or deacon. So, how did the German delegates fare after its synodal way was strongly attacked by the Vatican shortly before the assembly? She said, the German delegation was in a difficult situation. At the beginning, it was really attacked. In the run-up, delegations from Eastern Europe were obviously stirred up. We Western Europeans, and especially the Germans, had an agenda. During the meeting, however, it became clear that the concerns of the synodal way appear in many other national reports. Did you hear that? Let me reread it. It became clearer and clearer that the concerns of the synodal way appear in many other national reports. What this means is she's saying, if she's to be taken at her Spuler word, as she's spewing it all over the page here, is that the German synodal way represents the propositions of not just Germany, but basically all of Western Europe, or most of Western Europe. Okay, I'm nearly done with this sort of preliminary thing. And now she closes by answering a couple questions. Where were the other large local churches? Italy was not noticed at all, she said. Their bishop has come only on Thursday, which is saying something. France presented a good report. The Bishop of Troyne, and the two women were very convincing. Overall, I observe a rather conservative tendency in France, which is kind of what we hear. A big society contingency in France, and some traditional. I think second most traditionalists in the world in France after the United States. What questions remain? This will be the last part of this that we... oh, no, two more. What questions remain, and what do you expect of Pope Francis? Here's how she answered what questions remain. Will there be a follow-up meeting at the European level next year? Do we have the ambition to continue on this path, the German synodal path, presumably, since she's saying it's more ubiquitous than people acknowledge? I think it is necessary, but then we would probably have to be and have a Western European and an Eastern European assembly so that we can tackle our respective tasks seriously and not run the risk of blocking each other. You see, she wants this false subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is for secular government. Your secular government shouldn't be much bigger than a city, the church has always taught. Your church government can be global, one holy Catholic apostolic. Okay? Subsidiarity does not apply to the church governance. It applies to republics, the secular state. It even applies to integral states, if you have such a thing. Okay? So that's, geez, she's really honest. I appreciate her honesty. More than if you talk to Father James Martin S.J. All right, what do you expect from Pope Francis? Pope Francis stands for, I just said it, decentralized solutions. Meaning he wants subsidiarity in the church, not in world government. He wants the opposite of subsidiarity in secular government, which is the opposite of what the church teaches should be in secular government. He wants globalism in secular government. And he appears to want subsidiarity in church government, which is supposed to be global. One holy Catholic and apostolic. One holy Catholic apostolic. Global government of the church. Francis is the exact opposite. So he wants decentralized solutions, but he must now finally take a clear position, lay down clear rules of the game, and also make uncomfortable decisions. I don't think there'll be decisions for him. I think he's going to have to make an uncomfortable commitment to the Western European, that is to say, the German synodal way. And I mean way with a lowercase w here. I think he's going to have to finally out himself. He's already outed himself as a strong man of the left, but you know what I'm saying. Not only from Europe, but also from Latin America, I hear clearly that he must now move forward. This is also important because there's fierce resistance, for example, from Cardinal Marc Ouellet and his networks. Cardinals Mario Gresh and Jean-Claude Hollerich, who are responsible for the synodal process, these two men run the synod, are constantly attacked by traditionalist circles, even though they're commissioned by the Pope. Well, yeah, because they're saying heretical things about LMNOPQRST. Whew. So that's that. Okay, so that was a day and a half previous to this update tweet by Diane Montaigne, which is a more veritable update than what we now have. She wrote 24 hours ago in an interview after Synod VA presented the working document, the Instrumentum Laboris. Jepsen Helena, who Pope Francis subsequently chose as a new voting lay member, lamented that Q people in women's ordination are not or only weakly included in the document. There she is there. I'm looking at her with Cardinal Gresh, a picture of it. Okay, she says, I have no fear of contact. Helena Jepsen Spuler impressed many with her confident appearance at the presentation of the working document in the Vatican. She's convinced that the Universal Synod in October will provide answers. The Universal Church cannot afford to disappoint the faithful, says Jepsen Spuler. She will find out at the end of next week whether she will also be in Rome in October. Hopefully not. Here's the question. How did you come to be present at the presentation of the working document? She responds, I'll have to elaborate a bit. We don't really care, lady. This is the thing about the ladies. They like to elaborate. Just get to the point. Been planning a small consultation, blah, 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 blah. The idea is to get feedback, blah, blah, blah. And this, in turn, will serve as a compass for the delegates for Universal Synod. Synod office knew about this plan and felt that this Swiss approach should be presented more widely. Don't care. Boring answer. Were you able to see the working document before you wrote your statement? Jepsen Spieler replies, no, I only got to see the document on Tuesday morning. At that time, I had already written my statement. That's funny because she had higher hopes for this, the working document turning her way. Both the working document and this is a question now, both the working document and the execution of those involved, clergy, non-clergy, remained rather general. They became concrete and told the world about the Swiss dual system. Is the dual system as a model suitable for the Universal Church? Here's what Jepsen Spieler said. Every local church is challenged to shape a participatory church in its own specific context. They're just using words. That doesn't even mean anything, right? Context. That's not even, you mean in their own geography. They don't have a different context. The context is one holy Catholic Apostolic Church and all their irreformable teachings of the church have to be waterfalled down from the center. A context means language that explains and helps to situate a given quiddity, a given set of definitions or propositions. Geography is thought analogically to do that. Oh, this is the African church. White people think the African church really loves to dance. Whether it's true or not, that's what white people think. And it's like, as my friend Joe will say, it's the racism of low expectations, right? You know, oh, doesn't the African church just dance their way up to the Eucharist? It's like, no, I don't think that's how it works. The context is the Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, divinity of Jesus. Same for them as for us. Geography shapes this in some small way, but the differences between the way it shapes it for the African Catholics and us is largely overstated. You're not allowed to dance your way up to get the Eucharist, right? So it's like the racism of lower expectations. And people are surprised to hear me using the R term racism, but it is hilarious. I mean, there's at least that. It's hilarious that white people all think this about like enculturation. It's funny. It's funny. But context is the wrong word, and this lady is bad with words. The dual system has grown historically in the democratic Swiss context, which has a strong cooperative and associative thinking. This has the side effect that synodality is a long-lived practice in Switzerland. I doubt whether this can be applied one-to-one in other countries and cultures. This is a good question. Miss Spieler, you appeared self-confident during the press conference and were the only non-consecrated person during the Q&A to take the floor independently. Where do you get your self-confidence from? She says, in situations like this, my experience in human rights work with the Swiss Fastnaktion comes in handy. Focusing on the weakest and the excluded in a state organization and networking with others helps me to overcome the fear of an overpowering system. Possibly yesterday, people just saw that I have no fear of contact. Wow. Wow. That's a woman. Hear her roar. The content of the working document remains very vague. Were you hoping for more? Here's what Jepsen Spieler says. No. I would have liked the document to be a little shorter and above all more precise. Well, I think that's what they meant by more. By more, they really meant less and more laser focused. She misunderstood. The topic of inclusion of Q people in women's ordination are not, or are only weakly included in the document. That's that highlight that Diane Montaigne pointed out. But the structure of the document with the attached worksheets will allow for good discussions. Well, that's good. That's good, sweetie. Here's the next question. The working document mentions inclusion. All should be welcome in the church, it says. On the other hand, Cardinal Hollerich dodged a question from a journalist who wanted to know how inclusion of Q people, for example, and fidelity to the magisterium are to be reconciled. How did you feel about that? You know who asked that question? Diane Montaigne. Super based Diane Montaigne. God bless her. Jepsen Spuler said, the disdainful behavior and question of the very traditionalist journalist Diane Montagna, what, shout, holla, at the press conference were far more problematic for me than Cardinal Hollerish's evasive answer. Bam. She's on Team Hollerish, not Team Montagna. Let's see. Let me add 3 more questions. Let me ask you differently. In October, solutions for concrete problems are to be found. But as soon as they are asked about it, those responsible shy away. Which is very true. This is actually a good question. You could see this at the press conference. On the one hand, Cardinal Hollerish said that the Synod had to find answers with the help of the document. Later, however, Gresh and Hollerish stated that the Universal Synod should be about synodality and not about concrete topics. Do such contradictions worry you? That's a great question, right? They say, like, that's the way that the modernists in the church should be grilled. It's a template for their grilling in the future. You say that theology's too abstract. It needs to be more pastoral, needs to be more everyday and down to earth. And that's how they've filtered in so much material heresy into the church. So then we're like, all right, let's get down to it. This is the October Synod. Are you guys ready to admit that you want the way of life represented by the work of James S.J.? Do you want to say that's okay? What do you say? You just may. Can hit the hay and make things out of clay. And then all of a sudden they shift back and they're like, whoa. We want, what really matters is the process. It's about the journey, not the destination, bro. So then it's a 1-2 punch. It's an okie dokie. UTEP 2-step. It's a killer crossover. I'm going to keep going with basketball metaphors just because I like this. They're just trying to give you the okie dokie and get you to go, we're talking about this now as if it's not complete material heresy. How many persons are in the Holy Trinity? Is it 3 or 4? Instead of just being like, smack, I'm going to grab your beard, get the hell out of here. If they can get people saying, well, this is part of the synodal process, let's just be pastoral. Cool. Pastoral was supposed to mean more concrete. When you're like, just answer, dude. Do you believe in 3 or 4 persons in the Trinity? It's non-negotiable. Answer the question. Then they're like, well, let's just discuss it. It's like, no, we know what you're doing. You're supposed to be more specific. Let's get specific. But they won't when you actually put the better to his money here. She says, and she will listen to the way that she also advocates for equivalency, vagueness. I don't think it's bad that synodal structures and canonical restrictions will be discussed first, but the topics will not be able to be excluded in October because of that. After all, the Synod must remain faithful to the results of the worldwide consultation. That's not true. For a second I thought I was listening to some femme heretic, some little hereticette, and I was thinking she was going to say something Catholic, like the Synod must remain faithful to the Roman Catholic magisterium alongside inerrant scripture and infallible capital T tradition. But she didn't say that. She followed up, the worksheets in the working document contain the topics. Sassy. So you think there will be concrete results in October, she's asked? Second to last question. Jepsen Spuler responds, yes, many who are engaged in the synodal process will work toward that. After all, Pope Francis had a proclamation of the synodal process, which has also raised expectations among the faithful. The Universal Church cannot afford to disappoint them. Cool. I want to see what he's all about. If he's faithful, great. I'll eat my words. If he finally comes out and just says, no, I'm not with you guys. If he comes out the way I think he's going to, as a heretic, then great. Let's get it on. I'm sick of this 10-year foreplay. 10 years of foreplay. I think, it's a gross image, sorry. I just mean, let's have, we've had a full decade of him warming up, buttering up the audience. Let's hear if you've buttered him up enough, because the public's mostly dupes, right? let's hear if you buttered them up enough to be able to pull this off. I think I know where you're going. I think I'm very confident that I know where Francis is going. The St. Gallen agenda, the German Synodal Way agenda, it's all the same stuff. He's just literally, and the agenda says 2 and 2 is 5. He's just like, have I buttered these people up enough for 10 years so that I can say 2 and 2 is 5? I know you guys thought it was 4, but that's wrong. Don't think of that. Look at this. It's 5. Last question. You were at the Continental Assembly in Prague. I read that to you before. Will you also be at the Universal Synod in Rome? I don't know yet. Poor little Mrs. Jepsen Spieler. At the press conference yesterday, it was said that the list of 80 laymen and women who will be there in October will be presented on June 30th. I hope to see many names of young people and more than 50% women. More than 50. But I only find out on June 30th. So this is... Wait a minute. So that just threw off my date. In the interview after Synod presented the October 30th working document. So maybe we're only fine. I mean, because this is only tweeted on 8/16 by Diane. The other one was tweeted by Diane, the other one that I was reading from, on 8/14, 2 days before that. And what is it? But it's sounding like it's presenting the words that we might not have heard yet, might not have been published yet, from before June the 30th. I was a little confused about this before I went live, but at any rate, Diane, who was there at the presentation of the working document, says that this is news. And news it is. So what do you guys think? Leave a comment in the video below. My only commentary is this. I've already given it. Let's find out. It won't just be 10 years. It'll be 10 and a half years in October, right? The 10th month of the year. 10.5 years into the Francis train wreck. And I would just like to find out what cards he's really holding. Now, I say, I'm contradicting myself a little. I don't mean to. We already found out with Amoris Laetitia. That was St. Gallen Mafia agenda item number 1. It's irreformable. He can't do what he did. I don't know what it means that he pulled off what he pulled off. Giving communion to the divorced and civilly remarried, guaranteed 10 years ago in October, when he followed up, 7 years ago in October, when he followed up in October of 2016 with the bishop stuck into the AAS to the Argentine bishop saying, you have the only correct interpretation. So I'd say that's really the unmasking. But, I mean, if they do the LMNOPQR plus stuff, or they do any of the women's ordination stuff, or really any of the married priest, male priest stuff, that's a little less important to them. Because most of these guys aren't pining away to marry women, right? So the Viri Probati thing, that's always on hold. That's also not irreformable teaching. The Eastern rites can have married priests. And if they get it through, then each of these bishops is going to have to marry a woman if they want to marry anyone at all. And there is nothing with more cooties to these bishops than a woman. Okay? So they don't really care about the Viri Probati. It's ordaining women, feminism, and then the LMNOPQRST stuff. So let's have the mask drop in October. Let's stop with the foreplay and let's just figure it out. So that, you know why? You know why I really want it? Yeah, because I want to know epistemically what Francis is holding. Let's see what you're holding. Let's show what you're holding, man. But I'm sick of debating and getting kind of irritated at each other with other faithful Catholics that would really oppose this if Francis actually does it the way I've suspected he wanted to for 10 and a half years now. I'm sick of debating the Pope with guys like Jimmy Akin or Trent Horn, because we agree. Because these guys, let's be honest, if the Pope would just be honest and quit using the weaponized ambiguity, that is his total way of operating, and he said, look, I want to ordain women, and I want to do, let these priests and all people do LMNOPQRST stuff to each other in the bedroom, then these guys will agree with me, you know? And no, I told you so. If they do, it's just, okay, fine. I knew it all along, you didn't, but whatever, who cares? We all agree this is wrong, and we have to, in some way, oppose this guy. The question is, how do you do that? Well, the Pope is intellectually committed to heresy. So that's the best possible thing that can happen, is that Pope Francis is forced between his bet and the money. You gonna lay him, or you gonna play him? You gonna hold him, or you gonna fold him? You're a man of the left, we know that. But are you gonna give up your leftiness, or are you gonna give up your faith? Pope Francis. Boss said, we all know what the Pope is holding. LOL. What's up, boss? I miss you, bro. I miss you every day. Boss is a good man. He's been on this show before. We used to do the podcast within a podcast, in but not of. We should have you back on, boss. He moved and he was real busy. I love you, bro. And yeah, I do think we know what the Pope is holding, but I'm not certain. I'm not certain. I don't mind using my intuition. I believe intuition's a real thing for humans, not just in the Kantian sense of the 5 senses. There is more you can know that's not spelled out. Most cases at criminal law are decided on circumstantial evidence. A lot of these Pope-splainers don't know that. But I'm sick of fighting with the Pope-splainers, because you know what? Most of them are really faithful, really knowledgeable Catholics. They just are weird about using intuition. They think you're not really allowed to use intuition. Like if a guy is in the room twisting a waxed mustache, and he looks like a communist, and he's dressed in all khaki the way communists do, and he keeps saying things about workers' revolts and labor unions, and you know, he's citing the year 1848 repeatedly, I'd just go, yes, okay, we know what's going on. That's a communist, right? And some of these other guys are like, well, he didn't say so. In most criminal law, you have to use circumstantial evidence, even with that highest standard of persuasion in the criminal law, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Still doesn't mean you're ever going to get a smoking gun, because they just don't exist in most cases. The closest we're going to get will be the non-disappointment reveal, non-disappointment inducing reveal that Francis has promised in October. I want to know. And you guys want to know. We all should want to know. And if I've been wrong about Francis for 10 years, and he's this ardent champion of tradition and irreformable Catholic teaching, then I will kiss a pig. Right? Let's find it out. Let's have it. God willing. Deus Volt.